In this segment of this video series, I'd like to specifically speak to people who are interested in traveling to go on a bow hunt in another area, whether it's another area within their home state or maybe go to a different state. And I'd like to walk you through the steps that will help you be more successful on a public land, do-it-yourself road trip for whitetails. And I'm gonna give you 5 specific steps that you should take that will really help you be more successful. Now, the first thing, of course, is I want to address the issue that a lot of people, they would like to go deer hunt somewhere else. They just really don't know where to go, first of all. And a lot of people are somewhat intimidated by the understanding that just setting off and loading all your stuff in a truck and driving maybe a couple hundred miles or even more and bow hunting in a completely new terrain or a new state with different laws and different types of habitat, it's very intimidating to a lot of people. But I just would like to tell you that I've done this many, many times, more than 30 of these bow hunting road trips and all across North America, and it is one of the most satisfying things, and you will learn so much more by doing this. You'll learn a lot more about hunting in your home area as well. And if you just start out with the idea that I'm just going to go and I'm just going to have some fun, I'm going to learn some things, I'm going to see some new country, and hey, if I shoot a nice buck, great. If not, at least I've had a good hunt, and then you can build on that. And as you do it more, you get better and better at it, and you get more consistent at killing mature bucks, or at least a good buck for a good representative buck for that specific area, which can be anything from a 3-year-old 8-pointer up to, possibly a 150 class deer. So let's walk you through these 5 steps. Okay, first of all, you've got to choose which state you're going to go to. Now, you want to look at the tag fees. How much are you willing to pay? Are you going to shell out over $700 to go hunt Iowa? Everybody wants to hunt Iowa, but you got to pay $50 a year for preference points, and then it's going to take you 2 to 3 points to draw, and then the license is like $650. So they're very proud of their archery deer tags in Iowa, and it takes a while to draw them, but everybody wants to hunt Iowa, and that's just because Iowa is that good. And so, that's something to think about. This year, you're not going to go hunt Iowa if you don't have any preference points, but there are over-the-counter states where you can just go and show up and buy a license and hunt. In fact, if you want, you can just go, scout it out, look it over good, maybe hang some tree stands, spend a couple of days really trying to figure it out, and then if you feel like you got a chance, then go buy the license. You don't even have to buy the license until you're ready to hunt, but be sure that you check the state laws. Some states make you wait 24 hours from the time you buy the license until you hunt. Okay, so you want to pick which states you want to hunt, and you want to evaluate what are you thinking. Are you interested in hunting some of the really cool areas of, say, southeast Montana, where you have lots of deer out in the fields in the evening, and you're hanging your tree stand in 300-400-year-old cottonwoods, and it's completely different than if you're from Pennsylvania or, say, New York or North Carolina or something like that. It's going to be a completely different environment. Is that what you're after? Do you want to see a lot of deer? Are you interested in hunting some of the really destination big buck states of the Midwest, say Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, and so forth? So you got to evaluate what your desires are and what you want to get out of it before you choose your state, and then you've got to decide how much you're willing to pay for a tag and how long you're willing to wait for a tag. So now, once you've decided which state that you're going to hunt, then you got to move on and you got to choose an area within that state. Now, the book, The Freelance Bow Hunter, has a large section of this book where it defines the best areas in each of the destination whitetail states. And I've even gone through all of the thousands and thousands of Pope and Young whitetail records and written the numbers in each of the counties in each of these states that tell you which counties in which states produce the most Pope and Young bucks. So that's a good shortcut for you to understand at least which areas of the state have the best potential to give you a chance to shoot a really nice buck, probably a buck where you're not going to be able to shoot at home, which is the reason most people travel to these other states. So that's one good resource. There's a lot of other good resources. There's online forums, and there's state websites. There's they list public hunting lands. There's federal, county, state lands. There's a lot of the states have walk-in areas. They have programs where you can actually go online and see maps of areas that are private land that are open to sportsmen. Now, these are all basically public bow hunting. Very few of them allow you to use a four-wheeler or anything like that. Pretty much they're all walk-in. You have to be kind of cautious about this because most of the states in the whitetail range, especially in the Dakotas and Kansas, for example, Iowa is another example, in southwestern Minnesota. A lot of these walk-in areas are geared towards wild game bird hunters, like pheasant and quail hunters and so forth, somewhat turkey hunters. And you got to watch out really carefully because sometimes these lands are they don't have much deer habitat on them. But the other side of that coin is if you find really good deer habitat, you might be all alone and no one else is even hunting it. You might find a real gold mine on some of these walk-in hunting areas. Another overlooked area is the Army Corps of Engineers that has lots of public land that surrounds the major rivers and reservoirs. In a lot of states, there's a lot of public land available that gets overlooked because most people tend to focus on state wildlife management areas. Okay, so you know which area you're going to hunt in that state, and you've started to pick out some of the potential public lands that you're going to hunt. So now it's time to do some research before you leave home. So the first thing you want to do, of course, is get an online photographs like Google Earth or something like that. There's also like Hunt Stand, which is now combined with Scout Look, and then you've got Onyx maps, and those are all good options to use on your phone. There's GPS mapping systems that you can use, and you're going to start looking at these areas and you're going to start evaluating what they look like for wildlife habitat. Use online forums where you can ask questions of people from that area, and it's pretty rare that somebody will just give you an absolute bum steer as far as direct you in the complete wrong direction. Some people won't give you much information, but occasionally you'll find somebody that just would like to help you out and will give you some general information. You're not going to get specific spots typically from this type of thing, but there's lots of hunting forums out there that you can go on, and people will give you some good general information that will help you with your search for good areas. Now, when you start looking at these Google Earth maps and so forth and aerial photography, of course, what you're looking for is you're trying to figure out what food is available, what bedding, where the deer might be bedding, and you're going to want to try to intercept them, of course, in between. The other thing is you have to choose which time of the year you're going. If you're going early season, then it's all about the food and the bedding. If you are going during the rut, which a lot of us do, I love, taking a couple of weeks in the first 2 weeks of November and traveling to different states to hunt with a bow. It's a lot of fun because you see more deer, but you're primarily focusing on rutting areas, pinch points and travel areas and stuff like that. That's all stuff that can be determined by looking at Google Earth, and you can get some pretty good ideas of where to start looking once you arrive. Okay, so after you've kind of got this, you kind of got a good idea of the state, number one, the area within the state, number two, and number three, the areas within the public hunting areas that you're looking at. Then, of course, the number four is you got to show up. And that means you're boots on the ground scouting, and you got to put in your time. And this is a really important aspect of being successful. When I first started doing this 30 years ago, I went to an area, and I did this multiple times. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I would go to an area and I'd walk back into a spot that would look good, and boy, it'd be all torn up with scrapes and rubs, so I put up a tree stand and start hunting. Well, that's really not the best effective way to do it. I've learned over time that it's much more important to have a really good feel for the entire area and everything that's available before you actually hunt. my entire first day, a lot of times if I'm going to a completely new area, is probably going to be spent just scouting, hanging trail cameras, maybe getting in the evening, try to get up on a high point with a spotting scope, try to figure out where the deer are moving, where they're feeding, what points they're coming out of the woods into a field, say. A lot of public hunting areas are surrounded by cropland, and the deer tend to bed on the public area and feed in the private land in the evening. So there's, that's a way that you want to scout it out. Covert scouting cameras have been an extremely important tool for me to try to learn not just what deer are available, but their movement patterns. And if you're going during the rut, it's really easy to just use a scrape dripper with some good scent, like active scrape or special golden estrus in your scrape dripper, put a trail camera on it, and within a few days you'll have a picture of virtually every buck in that area. So, the scouting is really important. Don't be too eager to get in a tree stand until you got a pretty good idea of how the deer are moving, and that's an easy mistake to make, because when you find another spot that looks really good, you just want to hunt, but just be patient and wait till everything's right. So those are some pretty important parts of walking it out, learning it, and when you're at home, you have a whole season to kill a deer. You're going on a trip, you're probably going to be hunting for maybe 7 or 10 days at the most. You've got to make things happen, which means you got to hunt a lot more aggressively. You might not, at home, you would never walk through a doe bedding area, but when you're traveling and you're scouting, you might just have to bump deer to really figure out what their escape routes look like, and where they're bedding and how they travel and so forth. So you gotta hunt more aggressively. That means moving stands more often, possibly. It might mean doing more hunting from the ground and so forth. And these are all tactics that I've used to be successful in the past. I've learned over so many times of doing this that you just can't hardly be too aggressive, within a point, of course, that you've got to use good woodsmanship and use scent to your advantage, and watch the wind and so forth. But you've got to make some pretty aggressive moves to really make this happen. So the fifth part of this, of course, is now you're just going to hang some stands. And here, keep in mind that you're almost always going to have more than one stand up at a time. If you're hunting in the evening, you don't want to be in a tree stand and then you look at the weather app on your phone and you realize that the wind is going to change in the morning and you don't have any place to hunt and it's getting dark on you. You don't want to go out in the middle of the night and have to hang a stand. So you want to always have at least 2 stands hung. And it's typical for me to have 3. And I tend to start out with an observation stand. That's what I call a stand where it's in an area where I can just kind of observe large areas of deer movement. A lot of these public hunting properties have food plots on them and so forth, and a lot of them, like I said, have farm ground along the edges of them. So my first tree stand set is likely to be an area where I can kind of observe how the deer are moving, and then I tend to move and kind of focus on them and get tighter and tighter towards where the specific buck that I'm hoping to shoot is at. So that's the 5 steps that can really be helpful to you. I hope this really helps you, and there's a lot more of this type of information on this channel, so please hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification. I just want to encourage you to just go do it. This is some of the most fun I've ever had, is just loading tree stands in a truck and going to a new area to hunt. It's so rewarding when you do kill a nice buck, and realistically, you can't expect to kill a deer every time. So you just got to appreciate the experience along the way too. So thanks for being a part of this. If you got specific comments or anything you'd like to share, drop it in the comment section below. If you think of something that I could have covered in this, or you'd like to see covered in a different video, leave a comment below. I'd be happy to address those issues. So thank you so much for following along, and good luck in your hunting.